Now you will see that evil will always triumph, because good is dumb. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode number 33 of Movies Are Awesome, the show all about rare stamp collecting. My name is Nathan Pottle, and thank you for joining me today, and it finally happened. I got to see Jojo Rabbit, and I was so excited going into the theater, and now I get to sit here and talk about it with you guys. A little bit of a spoiler ahead, I really liked it. This movie, oh my goodness, it was just fantastic. Did everything that I needed it to. As always with my reviews, I will go non-spoilers first, and then when I'm done talking about non-spoilers and I want to get into more of the nitty-gritty of what happens in the film, I will give you a warning and we will move on from there. So why don't we just straight up, first things first, let's talk about Taika Waititi. Now, Taika Waititi is a director from New Zealand, and if you're not familiar with who he is actually becoming a pretty big name now. It's a little bit of a humble brag for me, but I liked him before he was cool, before he did Thor Ragnarok and really came on the map. I was a fan of his work already. So, I'm not saying that if you liked him after Thor Ragnarok that you're just a bandwagoner or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. I just want people to know that I'm not a bandwagoner. But it is okay to be one, I guess, if that's what's up. But anyways, his other movies, especially What We Do in the Shadows and The Hunt for the Wilder People, are fantastic. If you have not seen them, highly recommend. And then, of course, he did Thor Ragnarok, which was his big on the map. I do believe he directed an episode of The Mandalorian, which is coming onto Disney Plus very soon. That drops next week. I don't know which episode in the season he directed, though. It's definitely not the first one, because I'm pretty sure Dave Filoni is directing the pilot. But we'll eventually get to him. But he also directed Jojo Rabbit. I was also announced that he's directing some kind of movie. What's it called? It's some kind of Native American film. I can't remember the title of it, but he's getting a lot more projects now because he's just exploded onto the scene and people really like his work. And Jojo Rabbit is really excellent. It is my favorite of his films that I have seen so far. But let's talk about kind of what this movie is about. So basically, our main character, Jojo, who gets nicknamed Jojo Rabbit, he is a 10-year-old boy living in Germany in the 1940s, and he is a Nazi youth, and he just wants to be a Nazi. He loves Hitler and all of these different stuff, to the point that his imaginary friend is a personification of Hitler, and he calls him Adolf, and he talks about stuff and all of these different things. And he goes through this training camp of how to be a Nazi, all these different things. But the story really starts when he discovers that his mom is secretly hiding a Jewish girl in their house so that she doesn't get sent to a concentration camp and die. And it's all about him learning to come to terms with that and just exactly who this girl is and learning more about the Jewish people as opposed to what he thinks a Jewish person is, the lies that he's been fed. And it's just this whole big satire about anti-hate and anti-Nazi, and it just really is about finding common ground with people and learning to get along with them and learning to love them. And I think that's what this movie is about at its heart. The cast, we've got a really good cast. This movie is I really liked all of them. The young boy who plays Jojo Rabbit, his name is Roman Griffin Davis. I don't think I've seen anything else with him in it. Thomasin McKenzie plays the character of Elsa, who is the Jewish girl living in the house. Scarlett Johansson is Jojo's mom, Rosie. And then we also have Sam Rockwell, Archie Yates, Alfie Allen is in this movie a little bit. And, what is her name? I always forget. And then, of course, Taika Waititi plays Adolf as well. So this movie is hilarious. One thing that Taika Waititi does better than anything else is he's a very funny person, and he understands humor very, very well. So this movie is just packed with jokes and humor, and I think when you have a movie of this subject matter, that you can really like walk that line. Like it's a fine line to walk, is what I mean, between like being too funny and then not taking your subject matter seriously. And this movie, I think, does a really good job of giving us the humor and then like filled with heart and emotion as well. There are some things that happen in this movie that are really emotionally impactful, that are really serious, and it handles it very, very well. Circling back to the cast, because I only just kind of breezed over them, I didn't talk about them all. Roman Griffin Davis, who plays Jojo, is very good. I've been saying it, like I've said it before, but normally I don't really like kid actors. They really distract me from the movie. But over the last few years, movies have been getting better and better at casting child actors and like finding better ones. And when you have a movie like this, who's led by a child, you have to like find someone who really embodies that character and is going to be able to portray it very well. And I think that Roman Griffin Davis does an excellent job. He is very funny. He's very emotional when he needs to be. He does everything that is asked of him, and I think that is just excellent. I don't think any of these performances are like nominated for Best Actor or Best Actress kind of thing, but they're all good enough that I just really enjoyed what I was watching. Scarlett Johansson might be my favorite performance from the movie. Now, she is a Jewish sympathist whose son like loves Nazis and really wants to be a Nazi. So like her parenting style, and like her husband is off like fighting in the war. So it's just her and her son, and she has to kind of keep things on the down low because she doesn't want her son to know about Elsa, who's living in the house. And she really plays her role really well. And she's a very loving mother. She loves Jojo so much and wants to protect him and wants what's best for him. And it really shows. And it really shows through her performance. I thought it was just great. Like all of her outfits were really on point. Like her German hat and like the clothes that she wore. It was really great, and she has some good funny lines in the movie as well. So Scarlett Johansson, I think, it might be the standout in the movie for me. Thomasin McKenzie, who plays Elsa, is also very good. I think she probably has the most serious role of all of them in the film, because she is a Jewish girl in the 1940s living in Germany who's trying to not die. So I think that she has like the heaviest of the roles, and I think she does a good job at it. Sam Rockwell is also in this movie. He plays a Nazi general, and he is surprisingly nuanced as well. I liked his performance, and the stuff that his character has to do throughout the movie gets a little bit more and more complex, and he really develops well, and I like that a lot. And then we also have Archie Yates, who plays Jojo's friend Yorkie. He's just a little chubby kid with glasses, and he's basically just there for comic relief. It's really, really good. All of his lines are killer. He's super funny, really good comedic timing with this kid. Excellent. I liked him a lot in the movie as well. Overall, this movie has a bit of a Wes Anderson feel. Like some of the shots and the color palettes and the way the characters are talking and interacting with each other, it really has that kind of Wes Anderson influence to it. Like it's not so much to the point that I think he's trying to rip off Wes Anderson. I don't think that at all. But I do think that there's definitely some influence there, and that's totally fine because I like Wes Anderson's movies a lot. And if he can take that style and Taika Waititi can kind of make it his own, which he did in this movie, I'm totally fine with that. It's not a problem at all. But it's just something that I noticed that I felt I should share with you guys, the listeners of my podcast. Now, one thing I mentioned a little bit earlier is this movie does a really good job of balancing humor and heart. There's like a very specific point in the film, which I'll talk about in spoilers, that kind of shifts how the tone is of this film, and then from that point on, it takes it a little more seriously. There is still humor and stuff going on, but it's just not as much as earlier in the film, and that's totally fine. But it feels like this movie is kind of divided into two, like before this event and after this event. So like I guess it makes sense because of what happens. It makes sense that things would definitely be playing out differently, and there would be a little bit less humor and taking things a little more seriously. But I wish that maybe this movie was a little bit more consistent throughout, of like humor, heart, humor, heart, humor, heart, kind of going through the movie that way, as opposed to kind of having this clear divide of this part of the movie is fun, this part of the movie is still fun, but a little bit more serious, and you gotta, like, pay attention to it more, right? That is probably a good talking point to spin off into spoilers, and I can just talk about that event right off the bat. So if you have not seen Jojo Rabbit and you want to go see it and you don't want things to be ruined for you, just go ahead and go watch the movie and then come back. We can have a nice discussion about what happens in the film. Or if you have not seen the movie and you don't care about spoilers, just keep on listening and I'll tell you what happens. Here's a spoiler. World War II ends. So the big event that I am talking about is obviously the death of Rosie, and like she was discovered as a Jewish sympathist and was hung for it. And the way the movie reveals it is brilliant because it's out of nowhere, and like it just happens. Like you have Jojo chasing a butterfly through the streets because he feels butterflies in his stomach because he's falling in love with Elsa, and he's like chasing around this butterfly, and then he stands up, and like as the camera moves up, you just see a pair of shoes. And the movie did a great job of showing us those shoes several times, with Rosie dancing and walking and like spinning around grabbing her shoes. Like you know what her shoes look like at this point in the movie, so that when this shot happens, the legwork has been done and you know who those shoes are and you know who's wearing them. And that, because it never shows Scarlett Johansson's face in the news, all you see is her shoes, and then there's another shot from behind where you see like a full body, but you never see her face. The movie doesn't beat you over the head with who's hanging there, because all it needs to do is show you the shoes and Jojo's reaction, and that's it. And that's the point in the movie where it gets a little bit more serious, because obviously his mom is dead. So now he has to fight the war alone, basically. He's not fighting, but he has to brave through the war alone, and it's just him and Elsa. And he doesn't even really know if he can fully trust Elsa because she's Jewish, but at the same time he's kind of falling in love with her. So like the way they treat his, like, their kind of mutual love for each other at the end of the movie is, I think, very well done. Like he's like, "You just love me like a brother," and Elsa's like, "Yes, just I love you like a brother," because she's quite a bit older than him. I think she is supposed to be like 20, like 19 or 20. And Jojo Rabbit is obviously only 10. So there's no kind of relationship there other than like a familial type of relationship between a brother and a sister. And I really like how, like, Jojo and Elsa spending time throughout the movie interacting with each other and really learning about these characters and getting to know who they are and what they stand for and what they believe. And Jojo's journey, especially at the beginning of the movie, he's running through the streets, like Heil Hitlering every single person he runs by, like just having a great time, and going to this Nazi camp and thinks it's the greatest thing, and he throws the grenade and it explodes in his face. And it's just such a full and complete story arc for him, from going to this wide-eyed and hopeful person who like is believing all of the lies that he's been fed, and turning into this more matured character who now understands what a Jewish person actually is, and they're no different from anybody else, and he can interact with them, and he can love them, and he can be friends with them, and it's fine. It's not a problem. And you don't have to hate someone, and you don't have to kill them just because someone else tells you that you should. And I think that message of the film is really spectacular. If you're on Twitter, Taika Waititi's Twitter is fantastic, and he has been like talking about the movie and like other things. And there was one tweet he said, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of that it's a shame that even as we're getting close to, even like we're 100 years past World War One, and even though World War II isn't 100 years ago yet, it was still so long ago, and that this is a message that people feel they still need to make in films, and like tell people, hey, don't hate other people. That he's kind of disappointed in the fact that like movies like this even need to exist in order to teach people, hey, don't hate other people. So like I thought that was really, really interesting in his tweet. But he's very funny on Twitter too, because one guy tweeted him and he was asking why Jojo Rabbit was so delayed in coming to Germany and why he had to wait so long to see it in Germany. And Taika Waititi replied to the tweet. He said, it's punishment for you know what. Obviously, you know what is World War II. So that's kind of funny that he's very unapologetic in the humor that he does and the things that he makes jokes at, and I really appreciate that in his humor. But as the movie gets further in, we do move away from the humor and get into like more tension and more emotion. And the scene where we have the Nazi investigators, they come to the house and they're like looking through all of their stuff, that scene to me is very tense. And then Elsa pretends to be Jojo's sister who passed away, and we get this really tense scene of like her pretending to be Jojo's sister and seeing if the Nazis will buy it or not, and then they eventually do and they leave. And then it's revealed that Sam Rockwell's character actually helped them get away with it. Like, she gave the wrong birth date on the passport, but he said it was right. And that's part of his character's journey too, that he actually like is caring towards other people, and he's just part of this war, that not everyone who's a Nazi is an evil person. And that's just wonderful. A lot of these characters go on like really interesting journeys throughout the film. And one thing that is really impactful and really beautiful is that when Jojo is asking Elsa about things that Jewish people like, he's like, oh, and you love beautiful things, shiny things, jewels and gold and money. And then he follows up with saying, but you also love ugly things. You like things that are ugly. And then we go into the next scene, or it was either the scene before or the scene right after, but Jojo asks Adolf if Adolf thinks that Jojo is ugly, and Adolf just says yes, because earlier in the film, he set off a grenade that like scarred his face, and the scars aren't even bad. They're kind of cool looking actually, so like he doesn't have to worry about being ugly, but from his perspective, he is ugly, and so that's why he said like, you love ugly things, because he wants Elsa to love him, and like to see him as a person and not just like this crippled kid who has a scarred face now. And I think that that's really fantastic and really impactful. It might be one of the best scenes of the movie, looking back and thinking on it. Also, the reveal of Rosie's death is also very impactful. I also love how this movie ends. Like, you have the end of the war, and you actually have Jojo lied to Elsa about who won the war, because he was afraid that she would leave and he wouldn't be with her anymore, that she would just leave and he would be all alone. And because he didn't want that, he said like, no, you need to stay with me. I will protect you. We're still in this war, but I'll keep you safe, because he doesn't want to be alone. Who knows if his dad is going to come back? His older sister is dead. His mom is dead. It's just him and Elsa. And he doesn't want to be alone. He wants to be with her. And then when it's revealed that he lied and Germany lost the war, she gives him a little slap, and then they're so happy that she can be free now. And they do what she said she would do. She said she would dance if Germany lost the war, and that's what they do. And they dance across from each other, and just cutting back and forth to the camera shots of them dancing. I think it was a really great ending to the film. I liked it a lot. Really brought everything together, tied the movie up. It fulfilled on all the promises. I'm fine that we didn't see the dad coming home or finding out like what happened to Jojo's dad. It's not relevant to the film. He wasn't in the movie at all. So it's not something that I feel we needed at all. At the very end also, when we have, as we go through the movie, Adolf, the imaginary friend, gets meaner and meaner and meaner, and he begins more revealing who he really is and just like how awful of a person he is. And we get the final interaction between Jojo and Adolf, and he gives one of the best F-bombs in a movie I've ever placed. If you were only to use one, you should use it this way. And he like kicks Hitler in the stomach and he flies out the window, and it's really good, really satisfying to watch. I liked that part a lot. Another part about this movie that I really found funny was all of the lies about Jews that Jojo believes, that they have horns and they sleep upside down and they like steal people and eat them, and they like all of these different lies. It's very, very funny and obviously ridiculous, to the point that when Jojo is even telling these things to Sam Rockwell and the other Nazis, that they just kind of like slough it off, and like they know that Jewish people are people, but they just kind of entertain the kid and don't give him too much credit or notice, right? But as he writes his book, and Elsa's fiance Nathan, who Jojo decides that he hates, and like draws all of these different ways that Nathan should die, it's really, really good. I loved this movie. I hope I get to go see it again. I think that's going to be it for today's episode, though. I don't have too much else to say about the movie other than please go see it if you have not. I really liked it a lot. I do believe it is my favorite movie of this year so far. There are still some movies that I need to go see. I'm going to go see The Lighthouse tonight, hopefully, so I'll talk about that next week if I go to see it. I'm going to go see Frozen. I'm going to see Knives Out. Gonna see Star Wars. There's still movies on the docket here, but I think Jojo Rabbit is a front runner for sure. I'd be very surprised if it's not nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. It might even have a shot at winning. This movie is that good. So if you saw Jojo Rabbit, I would love to know what your thoughts on the movie were. Maybe you didn't like it at all. I would love to know why. You can reach out to me on social media. You can find me on Twitter at PoddleNathan and on Instagram at Poddle Productions. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And if you have nothing else to do, go watch more movies.